So thank you ever so much for doing this. Um, Tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do?
So my name is Madelaine Roberts, and I am from the United States. I live in North Carolina, and I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, kind of deep in the
Oh,
hollers of Appalachia. Um, and yeah, I moved to the Raleigh Durham area about 16 or 17 years ago to go to a state boarding school for science and mathematics, and then went to a university out in Colorado where I met my husband, and then we moved back here, back to Durham, North Carolina, 10 years ago, something like that. And he has his dream job. There's only like 5 left in the entire world, it seems. So we're staying in this area. And I built a business after working at the state in agriculture for several years. So
now you said two things there. Durham. I've been to see the Durham Bulls play
oh,
baseball.
have you? Did you get a hot dog?
Yeah.
That's all I do when I go there.
Well, that's exactly what I was about. That's my. Don't remember anything about the game. I just remember I had a lot of hot
Yeah,
dogs.
they
That
have
was
a
it.
very American day, which is all you can eat day. It's on like Thursday, all you can eat hot dogs. And they actually have veggie
I
dogs.
no,
So I go and I eat
oh, right.
too many hot dogs on those days.
No one told me about all you can eat day. Probably not because
Yeah, I think they're Thursdays. I think it's the last Thursday of every month and they have to get rid of food that's going to expire. It's like the classic. This is expiring. No one
also
can eat.
also Appalachian Mountains. That sounds very exotic to me. I picture remoteness and strange Irish,
Scotch Irish
uh,
traditions. Yeah.
Scotch Irish. Yeah, is that all real?
Yeah, so I grew up in close to Brasstown, North Carolina, which some people might have heard of. It's got the John Campbell Folk School, where they teach all the old kind of folk crafts and arts and things like that. We do contra dancing, which is kind of like a Scotch Irish sort of English country dancing sort of hybrid.
Okay,
It's a little bit more fast than English country dancing. Um, so
right.
I grew up doing all of that, listening to, Scotch Irish fiddle music and stuff, and then moved to the city where nobody knew what the hell that was. But yeah, Appalachia does have a pretty strong Scotch Irish tradition going through
Yeah,
it. So
yeah. Well, I could talk about that for 45 minutes, so we mustn't move on. Um, so you went into science, but didn't stick in science. Is that right?
yeah, I have never really known what I wanted to be when I grew up, and so I went to college and did a lot of random things. Like I went through design school, interior design school, started there. Didn't love working with clients, ironically. Decided to change, went back to doing a more like STEM based career path when I transferred back to UNC, the University of North Carolina. I got a degree in environmental science with a minor in biology, genetics. Started working for the state of North Carolina because we're a huge agricultural state. And I did agricultural testing for over 5 years, and the state does not pay you in money, really. They pay you in a lot of time off. So, um, especially we live in a pretty conservative state where they try not to raise taxes that much. So when there's no taxes being raised, there's no salaries being raised, and they're like, you can
Right.
have here's 5 more days off this year. And so I used all of those to kind of build this side business to get a little bit more money and have a creative outlet. Because working in a lab at the state is not the most creative endeavor that you can shoot for.
So the side business was floristry.
Yes, yeah,
Was
yeah, floristry, and that's what I do now full time.
right. And so, how did you get into it? What was your first steps?
Yeah, the first steps were having my own wedding and having extremely high fashion taste with zero money because I was just out of college. My husband was just out of grad school. And we, you know, we didn't have 2 quarters to rub together, kind of, as people say around here. And so we tried to do it on the cheap. And I was like, well, I can try to figure this out on my own, and went from there. And it was a bit of a disaster in the sense that I was actually still getting my hair and makeup done in the makeup chair, and my bridesmaids were handing me flower stems so that I could try to finish arrangements that would go on the table in a few hours, because it took just way more time and effort than I was planning and thinking about, and
Right.
all of those things. But yeah, so it started from there, and then people would just call me to help with flowers because they liked what I did at my own wedding. And I was like, sweet, I can earn a little bit of money with all this time off that I get from the state.
Yeah.
To put it into perspective, I think I worked at the state for like 2 months and had enough vacation saved up to go on our honeymoon for like a week and a half. So like, that's just kind of, I had a lot of time on my hands outside of work to do things.
And so who were your first customers?
So my mom really enjoyed planning my wedding, and she's the most type A person you'll ever meet. Just extremely organized, extremely on top of
Right.
it. And so she started doing some wedding planning on the side as she was nearing retirement. And after she retired from her job, she did it for a few years. And so a lot of people would come up to the mountains of North Carolina. It's like a destination wedding area. And they would want to do DIY flowers or something along those lines, and she would recommend me because they would get into the same situation I was in when I tried to do DIY, realized it was way too much work, and so I would come in and basically put together everything that they ordered for some cash, and then eventually just people started coming to me to do the full design as opposed to just stepping in and essentially being like, a helper for the day.
So did you have any training? Did you do like a course, or you picked it up as you went along?
Because of the way I started, I definitely just kind of learned as I went along, which was difficult because I had no idea about seasons and flower varieties, and it was a lot of work to learn all of that stuff. But, I really just saw it as kind of this little fun outlet that I could do, that I earned a little bit of money on the side here and there. So I never really wanted to take a course. I took a few actually online courses in the way that the internet is dominating our lives nowadays. There's plenty of people who offer, little one-offs or like little course series, things like that. And I definitely took some of those just to make sure I knew what I was doing, like from the get-go. Once people started paying me to know what I was doing, I would take a few of those courses. So, but nothing like actually going to flower school, where you're 40 hours a week in class doing projects. Yeah.
So what are the kind of the basics that you would have picked up quite early on? The sort of the key things people need to know.
Pricing. So like what to actually charge, what flowers cost, and what you should be charging for them for your time, so that you are actually paying yourself, more than like $5 an hour. And then there's also a lot of mechanics stuff that you have to learn to keep the flowers alive. So
what,
water.
tell us some of those things, can you? Give us some inside tips for. I've got a vase of flowers downstairs now, dying.
Okay.
I put some sugar in the water. Is that a myth?
No, not really. It's probably more bacterial based. So they need flower, like they do need some food in the water, but a lot of it's learning just basic flower care. So how much stem to cut off, like hellebore, for instance, also does really well with torching. So you actually just like light the stems on fire and cauterize them. There are certain flower varieties that need, kind of special glove treatments, like that sort of thing. When they come in off, like when they're shipped to you in boxes from the farms in South America, Holland, wherever, you have to know what to do with them. Like how to rehydrate them, what to put in the water, as far as like to sanitize the water, to sanitize your things that you're cutting with. You need to have sanitized for certain flowers, between flower sets, all that kind of stuff you pick up. And a lot of that information is available through the flower wholesalers, or they give you little tips as you go along and learn and that sort of thing.
Right. Is there a correlation then between how difficult it is to keep a flower alive and the price? Or is it more what they look like and price? Do you know what I mean?
That's a really good question.
Which is a really tricky one to keep
It's
alive that you let them.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of both. Like there definitely, I think there is a correlation. So like, I don't know how it works over where you guys are, but here there's like grocery stores will carry flowers, and they're always very specific varieties that have been bred to be like what I call zombie flowers. Like they can just basically sit there for a month and not die. And those are,
or less.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I have had some that just will not die, especially if they're in a cooler. I've had flowers for like 2 months before in a cooler, depending on what they are. I've had some grow roots again. Some varieties, but yeah, there's a correlation between kind of how hard they are to care for, but I think that correlation also comes from like how much a plant actually produces, and like how much of the plant you're taking to create the cut flower is also part of it too. Or like mums, to actually get like a nice big mum head, you actually have to go through and clip off all the other smaller.
Mum.
Chrysanthemum.
Oh,
sorry, we just call them mums here.
I haven't got the jargon, Madelaine.
Sorry. Well, you've probably seen them in the grocery store where it's like a ton of small chrysanthemums like all on a stem.
Yeah.
You can actually go and clip all of those off, leave one, and then it'll get giant. So those are more expensive than the sprays. So yeah, life, but also just the amount of work that goes into cultivating it. And then also, of course, classic supply and demand. Some flowers, because of trends, are just like way more in demand, and they can charge more for them.
So you just do weddings. You're not doing other stuff, but your weddings are spread out throughout the year. Is that right?
So over here, it's too hot to function in July and August. So we sometimes have weddings if people are committed to them being completely indoors for the most part, with air conditioning. I did a little calculation. So like on July 4th here, for instance, it was, I think we said 42 degrees. Yeah, 42 degrees Celsius.
That's crazy.
In July. So a lot of people avoid having weddings this time of year.
Yeah.
So,
well, I should say that's very different in this country. As we speak, it's chucking it down with rain outside. It's July. It's meant to be our hottest month. People just want their weddings in June, July, August.
Yeah, no, here it would be the opposite. It would be like, you're insane. Right. Things are starting to get crispy. It's not a great look. So most weddings here are in kind of the April, May, June, and then September, which is still really hot, like easily 90, 95, which I think is like 32 to 35 degrees, like on average. Like each day is at the average. But they start September, October, November. So there's pretty much just like 6-ish very intensive time here that weddings are like 2-3 month periods that they're happening.
You don't have any Christmas weddings? That's not a thing?
New Year's weddings are a thing here. But I am 7.5, 8 months pregnant, something like that. We'll figure it out when it comes. And so I'm not taking any of those this year. I had 3 last year on New Year's Eve. It's a really popular wedding time here. So
the people get married around in December and January too?
January and February are our slowest months, which is good because there's not really a lot of flowers like in cultivation.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Presumably it's not the same. It's not as easy all year round to get all types of flowers.
Yeah, definitely not. No. So, easiest, best time of year for a wedding where I live, I think, is April. You get plenty of spring flowers, and it's not too unbearably hot. It's usually lower than 85 degrees, around probably 27, 28 degrees. It's like at least like not quite that hot. And so that's kind of the best time of year. But I try really hard to get a lot of my flowers locally. So from the Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina sort of corridor, there's a really great wholesaler that coordinates all of the local flower growers in that kind of tri-state area. And I've been getting over 50% of my flowers grown locally. And so that's great because then
Right.
you really see the seasonality in the designs as opposed to the stuff coming out of Holland grow houses, which have some seasonality but are pretty much the same kind of thing year round. And then same with all the South American flowers. It's a lot of roses and hydrangeas and things that they can kind of cultivate year round.
Yeah. So it must be very satisfying when you've produced this amazing sort of show every wedding. What's the difficult part of the job? What's the hardest part of it?
You're pretty much just a single business owner. Most of the people I know that do this are actually couples. Like the wife started it, the husband got pulled in, or two husbands or something coming together because and I'm very guilty of it too, which is I'm usually so tired at the end of a night because it's an extremely physically demanding job that I've run several red lights driving back to an event to clean up. So my husband insists on driving me all the time so that I don't get into some sort of accident.
Huh.
Maybe the hardest part would be how physically demanding the job really is when you're only focused on weddings as opposed to a shop florist, which I have a
Yeah.
small
You're
shop,
not
but it's
just
not.
sitting there.
Yeah, it's not. It's still mostly weddings. My business is mostly weddings.
So you're not just sitting there twisting a bit of twine and wire. You're out there.
No, that's my least favorite. Actually, that's my least favorite part of the job. I would rather go up and down a ladder for 8 straight hours than make boutonnieres for 1 hour. I truly, I hate the small like detail things. I hate them so much.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, it takes forever and it's just dexterity and you have to make them when like you need to be out the door so that they don't die. Like if you make them too far ahead, they're awful. No, so as a wedding florist primarily last year with just me and my free labor source of my mom who comes into town and hangs out with me and just make sure that I'm eating and drinking on wedding days. I did 50 weddings in those kind of wedding season months. So that's not like every single weekend of the year. Some I'll have 3 or 4 in a weekend, depending on the size of them. But yeah, so I did about 50 last year. I only have 25 to 30 events this year, not all weddings, some smaller events too, to get to that 30. But it's incredibly physically demanding because you are essentially crunching all of the work into a smaller work period because it's fresh product and you want things to last as long as possible. You can put them in coolers, but it's still best to kind of wait as long as possible to create things if you can. And then of course there's all the on-site work that happens because weddings have gotten really, really, really big and luxurious in the United States. I don't know about the UK so much, their market, but here, it's a lot of bright white boxes and barns and things that are really, really beautiful, great for photography, but people need greenery and like arch installations. They aren't renting some like old manor that has gardens installed and then they'll have the ceremony out there. Like we literally have to create all of that stuff from scratch. And so weddings are getting quite elaborate and quite big. Most weddings, I need to rent box trucks to actually fit all of the flowers in for a wedding. Even like a flower delivery van isn't anywhere near enough room. Because we're also doing candles, sometimes drapery, flowers, and that sort of thing.
Does it feel like it's getting bigger and bigger? Is it like escalating over, do you think 20 years ago it was just a little bit of some flowers at the end of the pew in the church and maybe a vase on the table?
I would
each
say
table,
almost
and
10 years ago it was like that. When I first started, there were some people doing these like crazy big weddings. Most people who are older in the floral industry came up kind of the more traditional way through shops, and they own shops or they work in shops, and they would do, like you're saying, like you come in, you look at the wedding book, and then you get your
Mm.
pew markers and, your bouquets, and then you're off. I feel like it's just, there's been almost an exponential increase in
Yeah.
how decorated weddings are from every angle, not just flowers, but especially flowers in the last 10 years.
Do you have a theory of why that is? Is it like the Instagram generation or something? Is it?
That's my theory, is that you're kind of exposed to so much more. You can,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have all these possibilities in front of you, and then it's a little bit more easy to kind of communicate what you want, and the expectations basically too have just kind of gone up and up and up, and what people are willing to pay has gone up and up and up,
Right.
which is great. But also, it does create this entirely new job that I don't think really existed
Yeah.
20 years
People
ago.
didn't need trucks to bring all the flowers in the
Yeah, very
past.
rarely. It would be like the Princess Diana wedding, like you'd have like a
Yeah.
few of those giant weddings a year, and now a lot of people are kind of putting a lot of effort into creating extremely personalized, extremely elaborate weddings, at least in the US. Over here.
So one of my questions was going to be, what's the most impressive, biggest function you've done? But presumably, is that being exceeded every year by as things get bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I would say that's hard to pick. There's one wedding where she wanted it to feel kind of farmer's markety, but just like absolutely giant. I think there was like 60 guest tables, something like that. 30 something. And we had several arrangements on each table, and each table was color blocked. So it looked like going into Holland, where there was just these long lines of flower rows with
Wow.
flowers and color matching fruit. That was great. I did one recently at the Biltmore estate that was absolutely beautiful, but again, just a really challenging day physically, just because, do you know what the Biltmore estate is? Sorry.
No, I was going to ask. Go on.
It's the if you look it up, it's like the one castle we have in the US, that the
Okay.
Vanderbilts built, and it's the largest built residential home in the well, maybe it's not the largest anymore because of Silicon Valley, but historically, it looks like this giant
Right.
French chateau with acres of
Okay.
garden. But you have to carry everything in. You can really only park maybe a quarter mile is like the closest you can park in. So then you're just hauling everything like hand by hand in, up, up down these like gardens into a conservatory and all that kind of stuff. So that was really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have like a portfolio of where can people see your stuff?
Oh, on my website, which is Mood
Okay.
Florist. Florist, the French spelling of florist, .com, and on Instagram. I'm very bad at posting, but yeah, I try to keep everything pretty like up to date, just what I can do and that sort of thing. And try to showcase some of my, I guess, I don't know, more eye-popping designs, I guess, on there. But
Tell me, has there ever been any particularly demanding or difficult customers?
Customers, no. I think when I first started, I would have more demanding customers, just because, it was my first foray into really like working with someone on an artistic level, not in, design school. And so you kind of learn red flags, you learn things to watch out for, with the way that people are kind of speaking to you about what you do and all that kind of stuff. And I personally would be like my worst client. And so if I see anything about myself in a client, then, I try to avoid a little bit, just because I know that if there's two of us in the room, it would be quite explosive, because I am an extremely particular, extremely detail-oriented person, and that's kind of why people choose me to be their florist, is because they trust me to kind of have the highest taste levels and the highest, attention to detail and make sure that everything is as perfect as possible for their wedding day. And then they're like, excellent, you can do that part, and that's what I'm paying you to do, and then I'll leave you alone. But I get a range of people who 100% just want to give me a color palette and let me do what I want to do, and I have people who want to explore all the options with me. But I've been doing this, working with the clients, for over 8 years, and so I'm pretty good at managing their expectations when it comes to what I can promise and what I can't. I'm very upfront about that. I think the best thing to do with clients is to be as upfront and frank as possible, and not, tiptoe around it or say that we can do something when it might not be possible. Managing expectations is a huge, huge, huge aspect of the job, especially at the level that I work at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, a question connected to that is: Have you ever had someone come to you whose personal tastes and what they wanted was extremely far from your own?
Yeah, and when people reach out to me, I do ask. It's not like a requirement, as in like I'm just gonna wear your papers to come in here. But like, I ask them to send me some inspiration images that, they find. A lot of the times people's tastes kind of change between when they book me and when we actually start doing the design planning for the wedding. Right. But it's good to know like where they're starting. And if they're starting at a point that's extremely far from what I do, then I actually just recommend that they go to other florists that do that style. Just because it's extremely stressful. I sound like an asshole. It's extremely stressful for me to do a style that I don't do well, because like mentally I don't understand why you think this looks good. And therefore I don't know when the design is done. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I don't understand what about this you think is aesthetically.
Is it finished now?
Yeah. Like, it's one of those things where, trying not to make yourself sound terrible, like a terrible person. But, if I don't understand why you like it, I will understand how to make it for you. And so I have a pretty hard line with doing things that are very off my personal taste. But I also work really hard to only exhibit work on my website and social media that are my taste and what I would want to do again, I guess is the best way to say that. There's some weddings that I think are beautiful, that I did a beautiful job on, but I wouldn't necessarily want to do that color palette and style again, just because I found it challenging or whatever. And so I don't normally like showcase those ones, just so that people don't think I do it and then come to me asking for it. So.
It was very interesting hearing about like you told us about the Holland strips of color and so on.
Yeah.
Have you ever had other strange, weird and wacky, sorry, interesting and
unique.
bit more. Yes, thank you. You see, you are good at this, aren't you? You're very good at choosing diplomatic.
I am married to a writer and an editor, so he helps me he edits all of my writing to make sure I don't sound like I'm, Yeah, I feel like for a long time, skulls and like animal remnants were like very popular. And I wasn't really into that, like where, it would be antlers and skulls and things like that on the table, those kind of things. But there actually is kind of a trend now, like ugly is a bit in, or like the more non-traditional, the better, is kind of starting to come into fashion. I think people are just sick of seeing, a beautiful hand-tied garden bouquet over and over again. So things that are a little weird, dyed flowers that aren't traditional flower colors are really, really popular. And so I don't know if there's anything like in particular that's been like, this is exceptionally strange. I've done like 70s picnic, themed ones where a lot of what was on the table was actually like cut up watermelons and fruits and it was made to look like this very abundant sort of like picnic style. So not like macabre or weird or anything like that, but just different,
Right.
like styling with fruit and mushrooms has become like extremely, extremely popular, which
Okay.
might sound weird to you as a non-industry person. To me, I'm like, yeah, that's normal now. So
I can see. I can imagine a little mushroom in there somewhere. That could be
yeah,
all right.
yeah, mushrooms.
Um, what happens to everything afterwards when you does it all? I always feel like, oh, I don't want to know. Does it all go in the bin, or
Yeah.
does it go somewhere? Yeah. Oh dear.
um,
Anyway,
I
break the news to me.
try,
Come on.
yeah, no, yes, but our house backs up to Army Corps of Engineer land, which is basically like land that's preservation land for our waterways, so that hopefully our waterways don't get too contaminated. Um, so I have abundant woods behind my house, and I compost everything that is organic matter. So
Okay.
I have very minimal actual like trash that ends up going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does all get tossed. When I first started, it was the worst feeling to work on something for 40 straight hours, have it be enjoyed at a party for 5 or 6 hours, and then have to just shove it all back in your car and take it home. And so I used to leave it in my studio, and hopefully like be able to use the stems for something or give them to my neighbors. But when I'm doing the volume of weddings that I'm doing now, it's just not possible because I need I need that studio clean and ready to go by Tuesday the next week. Most
Right.
florists take Sunday, Monday off because we work all day. We usually work, 16+ hour days on Saturdays, and so we try to
Right.
take Sunday, Monday off, and then flowers start arriving Tuesday. So we need
Okay.
we need the studio clean and ready to go. So yeah, I I love it when people take the flowers. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
try to put them in vessels that are easy to lift the flowers out of, so that they aren't taking the extremely expensive, hard to get vessels with them. But
Right.
it just depends. I've had some families take every single flower, and that's amazing. It makes my cleanup better. It's better for my mental health to not throw everything away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would say 80% of the time, I bring 80 to 90% of the flowers back, and they get composted within a day.
Well, it's nice that at least they're going back into the ground, and you know
Yeah. Hmm.
that's we've got big composters out the back. It makes every carrot I peel becomes I feel slightly good about it all
Yeah.
going
The
back into the flowers somehow. Madeleine, I've got two more questions, then I'm going to let you go. Okay,
Okay,
I promise. I'd say
I
that.
got time.
Oh no, I forgot. It was just going back really to what you were talking about when you had five. You said five weddings on a Saturday, Sunday, or no, just a
Friday,
Saturday,
Saturday, Sunday, yeah.
Friday, Saturday. You're not going to all of those, presumably. You've got a team, or how does it work?
I should have a team. I'm a control freak.
Okay.
And so I'm working really hard now that I'm going to be a mom in the next month or two, to build out a team and find some people that I can really rely on to, uh, you know, do everything on site that I would. But I've talked about it with a few of my friends, how the perfectionism is what builds the business, and then it's also what makes it extremely difficult to manage once it's gotten to the level that mine's at. So I'm trying really hard to build a team. I'm actually going to be hosting a workshop for potential workers and freelancers. There's a whole other career called floral freelancing, and that's people who work for a ton of different florists in the area. Just whenever they're needed, they just go around and work for however many days and hours they're needed at all these different businesses, depending on size, because it's very difficult with weddings to like have a team that you can employ, you know, give enough
Mm.
hours to each week, especially during the down season, when weddings aren't happening as often. Um, but yeah, trying to build a team. All of those 50 weddings I did was just me and my mom, with like a couple where I hired freelancers when I was in hot water, because of product shortages, or there was one where like all of the flowers got lost for a wedding, and I had to spend hours and hours on the phone trying to source thousands of stems to, essentially make the wedding happen, because they just got lost in a Miami warehouse somewhere. But yeah, it's all me at the moment.
But the logistics of it, you can't be running to one church at 1:00 and then shooting over to another one at 3:00,
Mm-hmm.
or are you?
Yeah, so I pretty much do, unless it's just a drop off. So some of those weddings are designed to be drop off only, where I'm not doing installation work. I'm not installing anything on site. It's large pieces or urns, arrangements, bouquets that can be dropped, placed on a table, and go, in which case I usually can trust my mom or my assistant Dana, if she's helping me on site one day, to do those sorts of things that don't actually need design work. But if it's at the moment, if it is a wedding that requires on-site designs being built, arches, greenery installations, any of that, then I'm there, and I hop from wedding to wedding to wedding to do that.
Wow.
There are some times I haven't slept in order to get that stuff done, but it's kind of like being a teacher, in the sense that you get the whole summer, quote unquote, off. I'm in meetings, because of the way that the design schedule works. I'm meeting when I don't have weddings in, July and August. I am meeting with clients back to back to back, for prospective clients, design clients, all that stuff. So it becomes an admin job in those sort of months. But then I can at least sleep till 10 and, go to bed early if I want to. I'm not, pulling 16-hour days in a row.
I've thought that if you're a wedding photographer or a wedding organizer or wedding florist or whatever, it's probably a good book, isn't there? For sort of like a behind the scenes memoir of all the things you've witnessed at weddings and so on.
Probably.
Do any really stand out, or you're
like
too professionally bound to not mention them?
there are a lot of, like, the amount of boutonnieres and corsages, like the little ones that guys attach to their suits, or that go on your grandma's wrists or something. The amount of those that I've made on site, because like step grandma is mad that like full grandma got one, and that you like just like the like family dynamics, I feel like, are the only thing that really, like,
wow.
I personally see, because I leave before guests even arrive generally. So I'm just there doing stuff, and then the planner comes over and is like, turns out the stepdad paid for the whole wedding and his boutonniere wasn't on the invoice. Can we get him a boutonniere? And so I like make those little things.
Emergency flowers.
Yes, but I unfortunately don't really get to like stick around. When people are getting drunk. There's a lot of, it's hilarious how many like people come up to me, like drunk guests though, when I'm trying to clean up, and want to talk to me about the flowers and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty fun, because they usually like loved the flowers so much, but they're so drunk at that point, and they're just trying to hold a conversation about peonies or whatever it is. It's very, it's entertaining. I like it.
So have you, till death us do part and all that, but have you had any repeat customers? Have you ever had anyone? This time I'd like
I have not had repeat customers, but I haven't been in the business, I think, quite long enough for that. Things do happen, but for the most part, I try not to also like know. I'm at the stage where all of my former couples are like pregnant and having babies, and showing up. They come to my flower shop and my gift shop, and we, commiserate about being pregnant or whatever. But I am friends with a lot of former clients, just because I spend so much time with them
that's nice.
in the design process, and we get along, or our husbands end up getting along, or something along those lines. So I actually do have quite a lot of friends that were former clients.
Okay, so that's lovely. Final question then. Have you got lots of flowers in your house?
No, I hate flowers in my house. I don't put them in my house. I used to. And my husband actually works with a woman whose husband is also a florist in the town over. And he's from a legacy family. They've been florists for generations. And like he works in a shop, and she was giving us a ton of these flowers before I was a florist. And I was like, why would you not keep these? And she was like, he can't have flowers in the house. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And now I 100% understand it. I'm like, I don't want to see a stupid flower in my house at all. It's like PTSD, because yeah, every time you step into an event, something goes wrong, and you are on your feet making creative solutions happen. And there are a few, like, I will buy flowers for myself, but I can only buy flowers, like, I can't have arranged flowers. I can only have like a single variety of tulip that's just especially beautiful, because tulips are my favorite flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll get some of the Dutch ones with the massive amounts of variegation, and I'll have those in my house, but I hate arrangements. I won't put them in my house. And
So funny.
yeah, my house used to be a lot of different colors too, and I have, unfortunately, like, I call it like caveified my house, where I'm in the nursery now, and so you can see I painted a mural of like woods and things, but
beautiful.
the rest of the house is very like neutral, because
Right.
I work with texture and color all day, and I kind of need a respite when I come home, and
Sure.
so I want it to be as dark and cave-like and unhappy as possible. I feel like it's like, yeah, I love old English houses where it's just like they look cute on the outside, and then you go in and you're like, why are the ceilings so low and it's so dark? And that's like my happy place, because I like don't want to see flowers or color or cheer after a full day
Yes.
of working on flowers.
Come to the UK and enjoy our glum houses. Brilliant. Well,
The
thank you,
old stone
thank
ones,
you
yeah.
ever so much, Madelaine. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for talking to us. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, I hope everybody out there in listening world liked it. And feel free to find me if you have questions about being a florist, if I made it sound really enticing. Um,